Hey, this is D Knight.
This is Ty.
And Carol's on permanent hiatus. She's in her fields because Kamala Harris lost the election and Trump's about to end our democracy. You're listening to the Part of the Insurrection podcast, where despite the fact that Trump will not be held accountable for the insurrection, we will never forget. It's literally in the name of the podcast. So yeah, every single week is a whirlwind around here, whether it's election season or not. Obviously, I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that Jack Smith, special counsel, his office is moved to dismiss the charges against Trump in his January 6th case without prejudice. There's quite a few implications there. Theoretically speaking here, if Trump were to leave office, and that's a big if, these charges could be brought again, but I imagine, so one of the things Trump will likely do while he's in office.
We're never having another fucking election again, so.
Look, I assume that we'll have midterms in some shape, form, or fashion, and depending on how those go, if they go poorly, if they go south, that could be the end of Republicans ever leaving the White House. But we're
all gonna die.
Yeah, that's if we don't all die before the 2028 election, if one exists. So theoretically here, because these charges are being dismissed without prejudice, they could be brought against Trump again should he leave office. But I assume Trump will likely try to issue himself a pardon once he's in office for any and all federal crimes. Now, whether that pardon sticks, who knows? That'll be an issue should we ever end up in a situation where Trump is charged for crimes that he committed before taking office, and then it'll get litigated up to the Supreme Court. But as you've seen with the complexion of the Supreme Court as it's currently constructed, they're going to bail him out, even though, the principle of the rule of law in this country is no man should be his own judge and jury. So theoretically, you would have to argue that pardon is something you grant to someone else, not something you can do for yourself. It's President of the United States, but the Supreme Court can make any kind of rules they want to, just like they made up presidential immunity out of thin air, even though in the Constitution it says the president shall faithfully execute the law, not be above it. But in terms of Trump's possible liability for attempting to overturn the 2020 election illegally, while federal prosecution is not an option, state crimes are still on the table, and there are a number of states still continuing along in their investigation.
And Alan Bragg said he's not dropping the case. So,
yeah. So, well, that's slightly different, but we'll get to that. So, yes, again, state charges possibly on the table for Trump. When he leaves office, again, they probably, even if they, states decide to charge Trump for attempting to forge fake electors' certificates to steal the election, they likely won't ever be in a position to take him to trial, because I'm sure the Supreme Court will postpone those cases until he's no longer in office. And if he is charged by even one, I imagine, even given that, like, he's currently facing criminal prosecution, already under indictment in Georgia, he's never leaving office, at least not willingly, at least not alive, in one way or the other.
Until he dies.
Exactly.
Big Mac, if you're listening.
Now, yeah, fingers crossed, cholesterol will take him out before we even get close to
McDonald's, you got one job.
Yeah, and he's not looking too great here lately anyway. His health looks like it's questionable as we speak. Again, and he didn't release any medical information over the course of the election. No one cares. But again, just Trump always manages to flout norms and seeming rules of politics and pays no political consequences whatsoever. Also, in terms of holding Trump accountable, so it is theoretically possible that the Trump administration will go so far beyond, reasonably sane, but, obviously they're going to be insane, but go so far beyond the pale in terms of egregious behavior that he could be impeached. Now, again, Republicans hold the House and the Senate, slim majorities in both. So the likelihood of that happening is slim, but it's a non-zero number, and it's worth considering. Again, considering what Trump has planned as soon as he gets office, starting with these mass deportations, which in reality, because deporting 1 million people a year, even 1 million people a year, is nearly impossible. There's just no practical means to do it. And also, you have nowhere to send these people. And so, as the Nazis discovered when they tried to deport, and I don't mean to giggle at this, but as the Nazis discovered when they tried to deport 1 million Jews in Hitler's Germany,
who was going to accept them? Who was going to take them?
Yeah, where
and
are they
that's
going?
what people don't even like realize. Like, okay, every country isn't a deportation country. They don't always accept. They don't. Many of them, Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, of course, they're not deportation countries, so they don't accept deportation planes. So, but that's why, they're building the fucking Jaeger style concentration camps in Texas.
Yeah, that is the ultimate solution that the Nazis came to. There was like, we have nowhere to send these people. All right, send them off to work camps and concentration camps. And, again, the quote unquote final solution, no pun intended, there were the ovens. So in all likelihood, Trump's plans to round up millions of people and deport them to anywhere, because that part's not going to happen, is going to result in people being forced into camps. That's just what it's going to be. Now, again, obviously, the people Trump is hiring, they're largely incompetent, and they're going to fumble this, and they probably won't even successfully round up 1 million people. But hey, they could theoretically get 100,000 over the course of a year, and those people got to go somewhere, and it ain't going to be pretty when it happens. And again, who knows what kind of atrocities Trump's going to commit while he's in office that will bring to bear political pressure on a handful of Republicans in the House to open an impeachment inquiry. And, the likelihood of that resulting in a successful conviction in the Senate is low. But again, it's a non-zero chance. We were a handful of votes away from convicting Trump in his second impeachment after January 6th. But Mitch McConnell told a few of them to hold off, and that's why we're in this.
Bag.
He did. Oh. So a lot of people out there are upset with Merrick Garland, Jack Smith, etc., for not holding Trump accountable. And while I get your frustrations, I would say Trump was indicted twice by Merrick Garland's Department of Justice, like not one time, but 2 times. And it's not the only reason, but a major reason why Trump didn't face either criminal trial is because, he appointed the judges who were overseeing his case. Now in D.C., Judge Chuckin wasn't appointed by Trump, but that case got appealed up to the Supreme Court, where Trump did handpick 3 justices and place them on the Supreme Court, along with Alito, Roberts, and Clarence Thomas doing their.
Looking back, and I look at Merrick Garland, and I think maybe he wouldn't have been the best choice for the Supreme Court.
He would have been better than any of Trump's picks. So next week, what I'm going to do is for the people who are, Merrick Garland critics, and generally the criticism levied against him, I find to be unreasonable. Not because he's above criticism. It's just the specifics of the criticism. I'm like,
but But I do wish that Garland would have made any kind of statement, though, because he knows the criticism that's coming down on him right now or whatever. But if he would have made any statement to say I dropped the bag. I would, or even just to assuage any fears or whatever.
I mean, he said he was going to hold Trump accountable. He charged him twice. And look, so next week when I'll have the opportunity, I will put together a list of 10 things Merrick Garland could have done differently that people actually really don't spend enough time talking about, if at all.
Yeah.
People are just like,
That's
well,
fair.
Merrick Garland should have done this and that, and the things that they wanted him to do wouldn't have changed the outcome at all. Now, again, the things that he possibly could have done to end up in a different situation may not have been successful, but it would have been an opportunity, probably a better opportunity in hindsight, given what we know now.
But if he still had addressed us,
Well,
addressed
to say what exactly?
You know what? Honestly, okay, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what you want him to say.
I think that people feel like they need to hear from him. Anything to say, like, hey, this is why we did blah, blah, blah. This is why we didn't do blah, blah, blah. But to feel like he's at least
one
aware.
thing about specifics of the investigation is, generally speaking, the Attorney General cannot talk about specific actions taken or internal debate, and really only the charges at hand and how DOJ policy interacts with that. But look, again, I know people want reassurance, but that's not always feasible for an Attorney General to do when talking about specific cases. And that's one of the hangups of the Department of Justice. Like, if obviously Trump's Attorney General is going to do whatever the fuck he wants to and break the rules and whatnot. I mean, that's, again, if you don't like that set of circumstances, we should have just got more people to vote for Kamala Harris. But Merrick Garland does try to do things by the book. And again, there are things that I wanted Merrick Garland to do that he could have done that possibly could have resulted in Trump being imprisoned before the election took place. But it's not a sure thing. And also, the Supreme Court made it clear once they stepped in, first of all, delaying the prosecution of Trump in D.C. and then ultimately granting him presidential immunity for any acts that intersect with his official responsibilities as president. And also the part where they basically changed the rules of evidence, where you couldn't even use any evidence of his actions in court, whether he was being charged for them or not. That opened the door for, regardless of what Jack Smith did after that in court, even if those charges had been brought a year earlier, if we gotten that same decision, so any decision that the special counsel made in terms of what evidence he wanted to use against Trump could appeal that. It would end up back in the Supreme Court, delayed for months again. So the only way that we were going to get Trump in prison in 2024 was to win the election. That's just what it comes down to. There, in that regard, there was nothing really to Jack Smith and Merrick. But again, I do have something there is something that I believe that Merrick Garland and later on Jack Smith likely could have done to prevent that whole scenario, but we'll save that again for next week. So if we do want Trump to be held accountable for any of his criminal activity, the most likely pathway we're going to have for that is state prosecutions. And the only way we're going to get those is if he's pushed out of office by impeachment, likely, because there's no way he's leaving even after the next election. He's just not going to do it. It's not going to happen.
We're having no more elections.
So
let me ask you, D.
Yo,
what's your program fit?
My who? Oh, what am I wearing? What am I wearing to the camps, man? I don't know, man. Don't they make us wear all gray? Yeah, we'll probably have uniforms or something. Although, again, I don't even know if we'll be allowed to have uniforms because they won't be able to afford them.
That's true.
With all the tariffs. So, again, in case you missed it, Trump announced that he will, in fact, be placing tariffs on every imported good from Mexico, Canada, and China on his first day in office. That sent the stock market futures into a tumble. He's already tanking the economy before he's even in office.
I already took money out of my 401k because I was like,
I need to figure out what to do with mine. Yeah, do I need to just go ahead and try? Do I need to roll it over to a Roth account or something? I'm gonna have to get some financial advice before the year's over to figure out what to do before the economy crashes. Because when he was in office the first time, by the end of his presidency, My 401k was just a one. There was no 4. There was no O. There was no K. That bitch said 1. It was terrible. Yeah, it was rough out there. I was looking at it. I had to stop looking at it. I stopped looking at it at the end, the middle. I don't know. Somewhere in the midst of the pandemic, I was like, I just can't even look at this no more.
Yeah.
And then I didn't look at it again until like 2023. Because it hurt my feelings so bad. Yeah. So again, anyone out there planning on retiring in the near future, I suggest you amend those plans. And anyone who wants to figure out what to do with their 401ks, can we come up with a plan together? Because I ain't got no answers.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Trump's going to tariff, nearly everything to some fashion from those 3 countries, if not others. I can't remember the exact numbers, maybe 25% from Mexico or something like that.
25% for Mexico and Canada, and like 10% on China, in addition to whatever the already tariffs are.
Yeah, so maybe up to 35% in the form of tariffs on goods imported from China. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. You don't really actually, I can't imagine a lot of people out here looking at macroeconomic trends. But the amount of goods we import from those 3 countries combined every year is over $1 trillion. He's about to add a fucking just $250 billion tax. Oh my God, it's insane. And then, of course, so like the tariffs aren't just a one-off in this regard, because we're not just going to tax the goods that are imported from these countries. These countries are also going to issue retaliatory tariffs. So
yes,
instead of us paying higher taxes on goods from other countries, they're also going to tax our goods at their port of entry, which means American companies will make less revenue because the goods will be more expensive, and likely there will be lower demand, which means he's hurting our economy both ways. So the tariffs are a double-edged sword, but in the worst way, where it hurts us it cuts us both going and coming. So if you're ready for the economy to collapse, I got good news for you. You're about to get your wish. It's going to be hard out here for like a long time.
It's going to be hard out here for a pimp.
If we theoretically, it's tough. If we do happen to have elections sometime in the future, after the Trump presidency, whatever Democrat gets that job, as per all of the Democrats before him or her, they're gonna have a humongous mess to clean up.
It's gonna be a lot. And of course, I live here on the border, where of course trade is super important here on the border.
You don't say.
So this shit is about to get motherfucking wild. Like, it's going to be crazy as fuck here.
Yeah,
because they literally make the windmills. I see them coming across the border every fucking day. Like, there are in Mexico. Well, not even in Mexico, in Juarez, just over the fucking bridge. There are 300 maquiladores, which are the, plants. 90 of them are Fortune 500 companies, which are American companies.
Right.
So you've got 90 fucking companies over here, and you're doing this bullshit or whatever. Like, David, my fucking husband, his dad, when they came from New York, he was hired because he worked for GE.
Oh, wait.
And then his company,
aren't they laying off a lot of employees? Yeah.
He was put in charge of the company there. Him for working for GE. So him coming from fucking upstate New York, to come down here to be in charge of a plant. There's the head of GE. That's how David ended up being here. So, yeah, the shit's about to get fucking wild as fuck.
It's rough. And then if Trump does something crazy at the border with Mexico, I mean, it would be sadly ironic if Mexico decided to close down the border and 2 Americans run across the border. It would be funny.
And Claudia Scheinbaum, when she was saying they've already been deporting Americans. They're like, oh, you overstayed your visa, expats or whatever. But she was like, I'm kind of digging her. I wasn't sure at first about her, but she was like, oh, what's our solution to Trump saying this? Yeah, we'll just deport 2 million Americans.
Yeah, go for it. Now, she is, of course, the lesser of two evils. People talk about the lesser of two evils in elections. She is literally like, look, maybe she'll be good for Mexico in like a broad sense, but, she is basically, she wants to help her party maintain control in Mexico the same way Republicans want to maintain control here. And again,
it's the Morena party. So they right, are.
Yes.
But
we're not saying she's a hero, but again, look, at least she's going to, in all likelihood, stand up to Trump in some ways that might be meaningful and maybe other ways that might just be for show. And she's possibly just calling Trump's bluff. Who knows? Hoping for the best, but prepare for the worst in every sense when it comes to what the future Trump administration is about to bring. So there was breaking news today as it was reported that...
Oh, shit. What did I miss?
Israel reached a ceasefire just in the wrong war. So they reached an agreement that was partially negotiated by President Biden's administration that created a ceasefire in Lebanon. And here's President Biden talking about just that.
Today, I have some good news to report from the Middle East. I just spoke with the Prime Minister of Israel and Lebanon. I'm pleased to announce that their governments have accepted the United States proposal to end the devastating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah.
Yeah, so good news in that regard. Now, I would say, like, a lot of people are like, well, why can't he negotiate a ceasefire with Gaza? So that's more complicated, but part of the reason why Israel reached this agreement is because they basically succeeded in reaching all their military strategic operations and plans. All of those were effective. They reached every goal they set in terms of basically reducing the possibility of Hezbollah pursuing any kind of serious armed conflict for the foreseeable future. They decapitated the leadership with those explosive devices planted in the pagers. That was crazy. They basically reached every single goal they set forth when they started these major, large scale operations against Hezbollah a few months ago. And once, mission was complete, they're like, all right, it's time for a peace deal. Now, the reason why they haven't reached a ceasefire agreement in Gaza is a lot more complicated. But part of that is because, the military goals that they've set forth in terms of removing Hamas from Gaza are impossible. It's not something that can be done militarily. And also, even if it were possible, I mean, theoretically, 3 or 4 or 5 months into the war, there was a path forward to basically removing Gaza from control. The problem is Netanyahu wanted to drag this war out on purpose, and that's exactly
because they kept the elections from happening.
And then they, like, every time they would capture some territory, they would cede control of it back to Hamas just by basically just dilly-dallying around. They had no real intentions of ensuring this war came to a quick close, and that is largely the responsibility and the outright plan by Netanyahu. And now they're in a situation where there is no way to achieve a military victory. And look, I don't know what the situation will be going forward. I'm sure Trump's probably not going to help them negotiate a ceasefire. I would imagine this war is going to go on indefinitely until Gaza's likely annexed. But again, no one cares that Trump was calling Netanyahu behind the scenes and encouraging him to drag out this war and to hurt Biden and then Kamala Harris's chances of winning the election. No one cares about that. But, again, Biden's been working on this for months. It's hard to do that and be successful when your cohort is working in bad faith. But he did get the job done in Lebanon once Israel achieved its military objective. So I guess kudos to him. Pat him on the back. Again,
Yes.
if it were me, once you push me out of the election, I'd be like, all right, I'm putting my 2 weeks notice in. I'm going on vacation. But Biden out here working. He's been working ever since. I mean, I'm sure he's doing things behind the scenes as we speak to try and protect our federal government from a second Trump term. But I mean, I don't know necessarily what it is that he can do in terms of protecting the American people, but I'm sure he's making arrangements with our allies around the world to at least try to protect some of our classified information and possibly the protection of, future alliances that Trump may threaten just once he's in office, because he has a tendency to go overboard with his love of our enemies and also simultaneously constantly attack our allies and ruin our allyship. So, I'm sure Biden's doing what he can. Again, the problem here is the situation is just it's so drastically unmanageable that the only real solution to all of these problems was to never let Trump win a second election, and we failed to do that. I can't blame Biden for that.
Facts.
That was on the American people. We didn't make the right decision, and there are many reasons why the election turned out in the fashion that it did, but largely it's because people are stupid, and I can tell you how stupid people are, because one of the things in terms of Google searches that hit record highs after the election was a search for the term tariffs.
Jesus.
Yeah, you voted for the.
I can't.
But people voted for the tariff guy without knowing what a tariff is.
No, I can't. And the fucking realization that people are like, oh my God, the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare is the same fucking thing.
Oh my God, I hate these people. Speaking of right-wing morons engaging in total ignorance, the Trump transition team is having a rough time. It's not going well over there.
We are following more breaking news involving the president-elect. Sources tell CNN that Trump's lawyers are investigating allegations that a top aide sought to gain financially from his influence with the president-elect.
We have CNN's Sarah Murray on this. Sarah, tell us what you're learning.
Well, we're learning that lawyers for Trump have been investigating whether Boris Epshteyn sought to gain financially from his access to Donald Trump and others in Trump's orbit. Now, this internal investigation that was confirmed to me, Kristen Holmes, and our colleague Kate Sullivan by half a dozen sources. Again, this is an internal investigation. This is not a criminal investigation. In one instance, though, the investigators looking into this learned that Boris Epshteyn requested as much as $100,000 per month in exchange for his services in one of these instances. And I want to tell you what Boris Epshteyn said in response to this reporting. He said, "I am honored to work for President Trump and his team. These fake claims are false and defamatory and will not distract us from making America great."
Okay, so those claims are probably absolutely true, but the reason they're becoming public is not because Epstein is a grifter trying to sell access to Trump. Many people were doing that in the first Trump administration and have been doing it ever since. Part of what's going on here is turmoil within the inner circle here, because, look, everyone bought access to Trump in terms of trying to fund his presidential campaign, and now that Trump won, there's a vie for power to be the shadow president, or, one of the shadow presidents pulling the strings. of Trump and his cohorts. And not everyone's getting along over there in MAGA land. And Boris Epstein is going to be one of the first casualties here. And so obviously it's not a criminal investigation. These are like internal Trump transition lawyers doing this investigation. But really what this is a move to get Epstein out of the picture. Now, Epstein's connected to Trump's theft and illegal retainment of classified documents, and also connected to January 6th in numerous ways. And so I would imagine, in terms of like what information Epstein can hold over Trump in order to stay in his good graces and not be expelled from the next Trump administration, he's probably got a few aces up his sleeve, and maybe a joker and a queen and a jack and a two. He got a deuce up there. But you know, we always knew one of the issues that was going to is going to be a hurdle for Trump to try and get a lot of the worst shit that he wants done. And not only because, you know, the people around him are incompetent, but just like it's impossible for them to work together. And that's not even counting the fact that Trump simply likes to pit, I don't even really know what to call them, his stooges against each other. So it's going to be a lot more infighting. I mean, they're already going at Elon Musk. Trump's sick of his face, spending every day down there at Mar-a-Lago since the election was over. He'd be there every day. He'd be on Twitter doing drugs and chilling in Mar-a-Lago. It's crazy.
Elon has not left his fucking side. Like,
yeah, somebody called him the first buddy.
Left his fucking side.
They was calling him the first buddy of the United States.
First buddy. That's perfect.
Because he won't leave Trump's side. But yeah, I expect more turmoil in the Trump transition team. And once Trump takes office, Rachel Maddow is going to need a new board with all the Trump employees or appointments. And the Trump officials that get fired or quit their jobs. Remember, because in the first 4 years, that list just got longer and longer, and the board was big at first, and it had like 20 names on it, and then they would zoom out, and then it was like 40, and then it would get even smaller, and it'd be like 100 people. Of course, yeah, it's wild. She's gonna need a new board. She's gonna have to start off with board number 2, because of all the people he's gonna have to get rid of because of the infighting and the incompetence and. The backstabbing, and of course, there's going to be an endless amount. One thing that I can say, the Biden administration, and I don't necessarily believe that leaks are bad per se, but one thing the Biden administration didn't have a lot of was leaks. Now, occasionally you had people going on background, talking about gossip, but nothing serious in terms of like what's going on behind the scenes in the Biden administration, the Trump administration. It was just nonstop leaks. Kellyanne Conway in particular was quite known for leaking an extraordinary amount of information to the press about Trump scandals and Trump administration scandals. So I'm sure there's going to be a new Kellyanne Conway. We don't know who it is yet, but someone's going to be disgruntled with their position amongst the ranks, and they're going to be leaking to the press constantly.
It's going to be a whole ass mess.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be. I mean, yes, in every way, for the country and for Trump himself. It's going to be rough. But look, I mean, this is what people voted for. Insane. Like we saw it the first time, and people got like a 4-year hiatus. They forgot how good they have it and how bad it was, and they chose it again.
Like, oh, I want some more of that.
Yeah, people's memories are fucking short. So short.